Mr. Waters, thank you so much for talking with us today. And first and foremost, we understand that not everybody out there understands the purpose of the Ombudsman. Can you please try to help us in demystifying the work of the Ombudsman and what does it entail?
The name Ombudsman may sound foreign, because it's a foreign word for us here in Africa, because it is a Scandinavian word. But it is, the Ombudsman is a constitutional office. On the 9th of February, when our constitution was unanimously adopted, it makes at that time provision for the Ombudsman. And maybe we were not very proactive in making the people aware of the existence of the Ombudsman and what the Ombudsman does. Simply speaking, the Ombudsman is just a protector of right. And that is why our colleagues in South Africa chose to name their Ombudsman the Public Protector. Very befitting. The reasons why we chose to name our protector of rights the Ombudsman is maybe because of historical reasons, because there was an Ombudsman institute prior to independence. And, I don't say, but that may be because of the need of such an institution in the country. Because the Ombudsman plays an important role in protecting the rights of people. There are rights, we only talk about fundamental human rights and freedoms, but our people and people around the world have other rights too, which I call, or which is known as the right to complain. Namibian citizens have a right to complain, and they have a right to access to the Ombudsman. And the Ombudsman is then duty-bound to invest that complaint of the citizen and provide feedback to the Ombudsman. That is the other right, I call it a fundamental right, which the citizens of this country have. And not only fundamental human rights and freedoms. Now, what is the duty and functions of the Ombudsman in Namibia? And in brief, the Ombudsman is duty-bound or obliged to investigate, to receive and investigate all complaints relating to maladministration. We call it bad administration, simple language. That is where there are delays, no response from the public administration. The second mandate of the Ombudsman is to receive, investigate all complaints of human violations of human rights and freedoms. The Ombudsman have also what we call in brief the duty to protect the environment. And lastly, there's what in the past, before the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission, it was also the duty of the Ombudsman to fight corruption. But in 2004, when the Anti-Corruption Commission was established, the duty went to the Commission and not to the Ombudsman. But there's some a remnant of that mandate remains with the Ombudsman, and that is to investigate instances of misappropriation of public monies and misuse of public funds. That one is just misappropriation. It's just a nice word for theft.
I see.
And that's a criminal offense, and I leave it to the police.
Okay. And do you think that the Namibian populace really understands the Ombudsman, the office of the Ombudsman? Have you seen a lot of people flocking through your office to put a petition or maybe to table their complaints?
I said the day when the Ombudsman becomes irrelevant in this country, then I will take my bag and I will leave. But that day is not as far from here. Let me explain to you. We have just recently, very recently, in the beginning of, middle of January, we opened a regional office in Otjefrongo, in the building with the shared office with the regional director of education, who gracefully and thankfully provide us with the office, because we already identified the need to establish 2 more regional offices, one in Otjefrongo and one in Rundu. But because of the challenge of getting appropriate office accommodation, we could not. But I've just decided that it's time is overdue that we open an office in Otjefrongo, because that was always the idea and ideal of the ombudsman, to bring the office closer to the people. It was unreasonable to expect before the creation of regional offices that people have to come to Windhoek to file their complaints and write to us. That is why we established the regional offices. I've been informed that after some awareness raising through an advertisement through the newspapers, our colleague is inundated with complaints in that area. So there's the number of complaints grows steadily over the years, but we should not be patting ourselves on the back and said, oh, we receive more than 4,000 complaints per year. That is indicative of 2 reasons. It may be that the administration is still bad and does not handle the citizens as they should be. The second reason is that there is no improvement in the public service, and that is what the ultimate aim and objective of the ombudsman should be, that there should be an improvement of in public service. Having said that we try to bring the office for the past number of years closer to the people. But now you would ask me, but what about a place here? You will ask me, people, you haven't got a office in Otjefrongo, in Kobabas. That is so. It stands to reason that we cannot open office in every regional capital, as I can put it like that.
And why is it so?
Because of resource constraint.
I see, Mr. John.
Okay.
You are presiding over at a time when we have a lot of high-profile corruption cases.
Yes.
And are you happy with the situation that we find ourselves in? And can you see the Office of the Ombudsman itself has made progress as far as investigation into those cases are concerned?
I am so glad you mentioned the investigation of corruption. That is not my duty. It stopped in 2004 with the creation of the Anti-Corruption Commission. People must have a misconception that the Ombudsman is duty-bound to investigate corruption, and they blamed me for failing to do so. But that is not our duty. It is the sole duty of the Anti-Corruption Commission. If we have the gentleman agreement between us, if we receive a complaint of corruption, we will make a preliminary investigation to establish whether it is indeed corruption. If we find it is indeed so, we will refer it to the Anti-Corruption Commission.
And how's your relationship with Anti-Corruption?
That's good, very good. We have got very good relationship in that regard. we have what we call a power of referral. We refer the cases. But I want to make it emphatically clear. I cannot investigate complaints of corruption. It will just bring more confusion to the people where to complain. With the Anti-Corruption Commission of the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman, let me say, is hands off for him and his staff for corruption. Let us say, for example, if we pick up a complaint in Kobabas, for example, of corruption, we will look into it and then make our preliminary investigation. If we are sure that it complaint constitutes corruption, we will refer it. That is our duty, to refer the matters for the Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate it. My colleagues in this office, we are not trained to investigate complaints of corruption. Corruption is a criminal offense, and it does not suit in the mandate of the Ombudsman, because I told you that I'm a protector of rights, and I cannot protect people's rights and at the same time arrest them for corruption and then in that process violate a person's rights. So for the Ombudsman, it's hands off with corruption, but we have a close relationship with the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Has the ACC investigated thoroughly most or all of the preliminary investigations that you've given over to them?
Oh, that was, I can interview a few of this matter. I cannot even recall, you know. I said that is, I cannot recall whether we have ever received a case like that where we have referred to them. But I know they refer to us cases of maladministration, which is not corruption.
As a steward of fundamental human rights for the Namibian population yourself, are you happy with the situation of bad governance that we see splitting into the media? Are you happy with the corruption cases that we see that are inundating the nation of Namibia?
Let me say to you, we must distinguish between actual corruption cases or perceptions of corruption. Sometimes I don't know whether it's indeed a matter of corruption or if it's just a perception that Namibians are, or some part of the society of Namibia is highly corrupt. That may be a perception. Yes, the investigation of cases, I have no intimate knowledge how going through, but I believe that the anti-corruption and my colleagues there will do their utmost best to investigate. Yes, we are open to criticism, and that is another right of the general public to hold us accountable. You understand, if we are not doing our job. And it is the prerogative of them to ask that we must be removed. But unfortunately for me, I can only be removed on two grounds: when I become mentally challenged or when I'm grossly guilty of misconduct or something like that. But we try not to do it, but our purpose is just to serve the general public. It's the best to our abilities.
And as far as gender-based violence is concerned and crimes of passion and things like that, do you think that we have come at a point where the trend is a little bit lowering? Because we understand that last year we were considered to be the hotspot of gender-based violence in Southern Africa. Have you seen those reports maybe declining?
It's not even, I am living in the community. I've access daily to the news medias and what is reported in the medias. I am aware what is before our courts, most heinous crimes where on a daily, weekly basis, women are still subjected to the anger of frustration, of intolerance of men. And that, it shows no decrease. And that is a worrying factor for me. But how do we curb gender-based violence? Did we exhaust all means and avenues in Parliament, and that we reached the point of total exhaustion, that we said we cannot? I don't think so. I think that we should start to think innovatively and see what other means can we apply? What I said, things that you learn or mislearn in the tender years, young age, what you always remember. So, and I will always be an advocate, and for how long, that we should introduce compulsory human rights education as well as tolerant education in our education system. For the simple reason, children must learn from a very beginning that there's no difference between us. We are human beings firstly, whatever our color is, and our children should not be made aware of color differences, of race differences. Race must become irrelevant in this country. Color must become irrelevant in this country. Children must learn to be tolerant from a very tender age, that differences should be resolved through amicable means. Let us speak about, and not to resort to violence.
But how exactly do you think we can dismantle these remnants of apartheid that we see in our society? We still see society being segmented or regimented, along tribal lines, even here in Windhoek. How best can we combat these remnants of apartheid to come to a point where we live in a multiracial society?
I have suggested many recommendations of suggestions in my latest report on racism and racial discrimination. That is that, firstly, we should start with ourselves. We must start to have that, what I call, and which I learned from other writers, a cultural revolution ourselves. That is where we look into ourselves, that look into the deep roots in ourselves of racism. We all harbor that. Nobody can say to me, never in his life that he harbored an idea of a racist idea. We would look at that and in ourselves. And then when we confronted the enemy inside, and we said that we will shed all racial ideas, that is it. And then we will follow and say, I will never allow to be classified, I will never classify myself and allow that people to classify me as a colored. I'm not a colored, I'm a Namibian. We must start and people, that is not, that identity I did not choose. I was not allowed to choose it because it was part of the apartheid legislations, which compelled me to have an idea as soon as I was all people was above the age, and I was then forced to put in that application a classification, and that is so. And now we cannot get rid of that classification because the old IDs are still valid in our country. So that is it. I believe we should start with ourselves. Do certainly. We should race should become irrelevant again. We must create. We must embark on a creative language where we not speak of Damara location. We will not speak about Wambu location. We would address that thing, that names which are still with us. We should rather, as I suggested, approach the city council and see if we can have new names for our suburbs, of residential areas in the suburb. We should start there. We should, in a creative language, we should stop calling people a kafir. We should stop calling people a boer, a hotman. We should stop in a creative language, we should stop to refer people with disabilities as disabled people, blind people, deaf people, mute people, to referring to LGBTIs as morphis. That you violate a person's dignity by using such language. If we stop and with those kind of racial slurs, I think we would move a step closer to a racist-free society.
Mr. Waters, coming from the pre-independence era right into independence and across independence to the point where we are now, there has been a moral and cultural revolution that has been spinning on its wheel. Are you happy with the progress that we have made 26 years later?
No, I think the movement from the past 27 years was too slow. I think we are not near, and this I say it with the greatest respect to the principle of or ideal of one nation. We cannot. We are a nation divided on color lines, on racial, if I can call the word, the racial lines, on tribal lines, or whatever. We must strive to, and that is what we said. If we want to be one nation, we must call ourselves first Namibians, and thereafter, whatever you want to choose to call yourself. That is should be our that is the revolution, the cultural revolution which I'm talking about. Sometimes I have the greatest hope for our country, because there's the positives in our country overshadow the negatives. That is so. Looking at our youth, they are the, as I say, the inspiration for us, the future for us. But we have to look after them. Number one, they might become frustrated, anger because of unemployment, and that their rights are not looked after or by the government or institutions which are established to help them, like the ministries, you know, that is it is. But I have to hasten to add that we Namibians must appreciate and celebrate what we have. We have many things to be thankful of. As I said, we must live more positively and speak about the negatives. Speak about it in a manner where we can change the negatives to positives.
And we have seen the rise of dissent from within the camp of young people in Namibia. We have seen the rise of the Landless People's Movement that has been championed by a young former deputy minister. We have seen the AR movement championed by the young Job Mpanda. Do you see this as a maturity of Namibian democracy and a consciousness and an awakening of a generation as far as their rights is concerned?
Yes, and I am happy that voices are starting to come up and speak about concerns about daily life's challenges that maybe for too long we Namibians were too silent. I would never be the one who would advocate for violence. I would have said there's too few public discourse on issues which we will write in the newspapers, in the SMS columns, and speak out our frustrations and the things, criticize. But we do not hold, let me say, we do not hold our government properly accountable. Properly accountable. Look at, if you look, what causes this dreadful sickness in the outbreak of that hepatitis? Was it not preventable?
Very.
Now we put millions of dollars in it to prevent it and to curb it. Shouldn't we be more proactive? What I'm trying to say, we cannot wish away informal settlements. We cannot stop urban migration, internal migration in this country. that is a conversation for another time. But while we are settled up with the challenge of providing houses for the less fortunate and the poor, we should have started a long time ago to provide proper sanitation and water. If we cannot first provide, because it is an expensive exercise to provide housing and affordable housing for every Namibian in this country. But that sickness or a disease was preventable.
I see. And we cannot conclude this interview without mentioning the Namibian child. And I understand that at this point we've got the Child Care Act that has not yet been implemented. At what stage are we, sir?
The Act was promulgated, the Child Care and Protection Act promulgated in 2015, 3 years down the line. It is not in operation yet, for the simple reason that the regulations are not finalized and gazetted. Civil society organizations have requested me to inquire into the delay and inform them, because they are also worried about children's rights in this country. I've made the necessary inquiry about it, and I was assured that the legal drafters had fine-tuned the last inquiry from the Ministry of Gender Equality and Child Welfare. They consulted on the drafting of the regulations, and hopefully they will send it back to the ministry very soon. And I would promise that I will take it up with the Minister of Gender Equality and Child Welfare to gazette it as soon as possible. The regulations do not need to go through Parliament and to all the long legislative process, for discussion and then acceptance. That is regulations which the minister can just gazette it, and it will be, and then the law can become operative. That is another. But the specific act addresses all child rights issues. It is a splendid job with the ministry that it takes care of all children issues. In fact, the Act makes provision for the establishment of a children's advocate in my office. A very progressive move, so that we have a dedicated person with staff to receive complaints and investigate them. But unfortunately, before that, the Act is not in operation yet, but we were proactive. We appointed somebody in that position. But as you know, that it is in all over employment, people leave for other jobs. So the children's advocate resigned and the position is vacant. We couldn't fill it in time before the financial crisis hit us, and the position is freezed, which I cannot understand. It is a statutory position, and it is part of the Ombudsman's job. But the position, I was just being informed, it is freezed, but I would promise me that I would not leave there. I cannot be the Ombudsman of the country and the children's advocate. Last year we embarked on a investigation on complaints regard to a certain children's home in Namibia. The report was drafted by social workers and legal officers in the office, and it landed on my table to scrutinize it and to see that it is all the recommendations are proper, you see. And I have to do this in between my other jobs. That was purely the job of the children's advocate. But I was the last man to complain about work, because hard work makes one fit.
And on that note, Mr. John Waters, thank you so much for speaking with the Villager today.